Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is literally one of the most disturbing, fascinating, and honestly deeply misunderstood behavioral mysteries of the 20th century. So back in 1968, an ethologist named John Calhoun decided to play architect and build an absolute paradise. He had this theory about how societies function, right? And to test it, he designed a world with no scarcity, no danger, and absolutely zero external threats. But the result? It was a complete and utter societal collapse. And as you'll see, it might just hold the key to understanding our modern, hyper-connected digital world. For literally 2 decades, Calhoun had been chasing the answer to one specific, kind of haunting question. What happens to a society when nothing is hard anymore? Think about it. If you completely remove the daily struggle for survival, does a population just thrive in eternal bliss, or does it eventually tear itself apart? Now, he'd actually built earlier versions of this experiment in forests, in barns, in laboratories, 24 of them, in fact. And every single time, he saw the exact same pattern, an explosive boom in growth, followed by total, twisted apathy.
So, for his 25th attempt, he wanted the final answer, the one nobody could argue with. And the outcome was pretty staggering. In a mathematically perfect world with unlimited resources, the population experienced a 100% mortality rate. 5 years after the experiment kicked off, every single inhabitant was dead. And here is the truly terrifying part. Not a single death was caused by a disease, a predator, or anything of that could have medically diagnosed.
Section 1, The Perfect Mouse Utopia. John Calhoun's 25th attempt. Okay, let's dive into this setup because it's wild. Calhoun set this up inside a federal research lab in Maryland, and he was absolutely determined to engineer an environment where physical suffering was basically impossible. He called this enclosure Universe 25. It was a 9-foot square pen equipped with mesh tunnels running floor to ceiling, leading to what he called walk-up apartments. Every physical need was flawlessly met. No diseases, no predators, hoppers that never ran empty, water bottles that literally never ran dry, and perfect climate control. He calculated that this space could easily, comfortably support 3,800 mice. Let's map out how this actually went down chronologically. On day 1, Calhoun placed his 8 healthy founders inside and just shut the lid. By day 104, the mice had settled in, the first litters were born, and the population started doubling every 55 days. Huge growth. But by day 315, with over 600 animals living inside, this utopia begins to fracture. The population hits its peak on day 560 at 2,200 mice, which, remember, is way below that maximum capacity of 3,800. But the society is already completely broken. The very last successful conception happens on day 920. And finally, in May 1973, nearly 5 years after it all began, the final mouse dies. It's this rapid, explosive boom, followed by just an agonizingly slow and terminal decline.
Section 2, Descent into the Sink, when space runs out.
Normally, right in a regular colony, when a population outgrows its territory, the surplus youth just migrate away. But in Universe 25, there was literally nowhere to go. And this brilliantly illustrates a phenomenon Calhoun termed the behavioral sink. Despite food being equally available everywhere, the mice began crowding compulsively around just a few specific feeders. They became so deeply wired to the presence of others that they absolutely refused to eat alone. Interestingly enough, mid-century urban planners looked at this exact data and kind of panicked. From a city planner's perspective, they assumed that sheer population density in human cities would automatically cause rising crime and social decay. But as we'll see in a minute, they missed the real nuance. So inside the enclosure, the social fabric rapidly disintegrated. Males who had originally claimed territories grew totally exhausted from constant patrolling and eventually just stopped defending their families. That forced the nursing mothers to step up and defend the nests themselves. The stress was immense. They actually turned on their own pups. They abandoned them in scattered places, forgot which pups were theirs, and in the darkest corners of the colony, they even consumed their own offspring. In the worst sections, fewer than 1 in 20 newborn mice survived to weaning. The physical bodies of these mice were still alive, sure, but the structure that held them together as a functioning society, that was entirely dead. Section 3, Rise of the Beautiful Ones. The survivors who opted out. Now, the pups that miraculously didn't survive that initial chaos grew up with absolutely no model of a functioning life. Calhoun named this eerie final generation the Beautiful Ones. These males never fought, they never tried to mate, and they completely withdrew from all social interaction, leaving their fur physically flawless.
If you look at this through the lens of an evolutionary biologist, it actually makes perfect sense. Mice just lack the high-level neuroplasticity to adapt to massive, non-kin-dense populations. When every natural social role was already filled, their instincts basically short-circuited, and they opted out of the species entirely. The contrast here is just staggering. Absolute physical perfection and safety on the outside, masking a complete social death and functional alienation on the inside. And it's incredibly difficult to look at these withdrawn subjects without drawing some really direct parallels to modern human societies. We see echoes of this all over the modern digital age, whether it's the extreme social withdrawal we see in the hikikomori phenomenon, or just individuals living in super densely populated cities who retreat entirely into their screens, completely isolated despite being surrounded by literally millions of people. We've engineered unprecedented physical safety, yet we're experiencing an epidemic of profound loneliness.
Section 4, the death of the spirit. The two deaths.
The really grim realization here is that the colony was doomed years before the final mouse physically passed away. Reflecting on the timeline, Calhoun wrote something pretty profound. He said, "The first death was the death of the spirit. The second was the death of the body." It forces a pretty heavy philosophical question, doesn't it? Is some degree of struggle actually required for us to build meaning? Without a purpose, without a challenge to overcome, or a reason to actively participate in a living community, the internal drive to even exist just vanished for these mice.
Section 5, the meaningful role hypothesis. Shifting the paradigm. All right, so the crucial point is this. For decades, the general public completely misunderstood the real lesson of Universe 25. Politicians, urbanists, the media, they all grabbed onto this fatalistic myth, the idea that comfort kills, and that a life without physical struggle inevitably destroys itself. But Calhoun's actual scientific reality was entirely different. The killer in Universe 25 wasn't the abundance of food or water, or even the population density itself. The true killer was the total disappearance of meaningful societal roles. Calhoun was actually super explicit about this. He warned us, writing, "A similar collapse was logical if the number of individuals capable of filling meaningful roles greatly exceeds the number of roles available." It's simple math, really. When the population outpaced the supply of roles that the colony could offer, the society collapsed. The fighters had no one to fight. The mothers had no support system. The youth had absolutely nothing to inherit. The structure that gave each individual a reason to wake up and participate simply evaporated. Basically, what they forgot to put into paradise was purpose. Paradise removed the friction that made being alive feel like something, and it forces us to question things on a much deeper level. For any complex society to thrive, there has to be some degree of struggle, right? Some meaningful friction that allows individuals to construct a sense of identity and belonging. Section 6, Escaping Universe 25, the constructive resolution. Okay, this is absolutely the most important part of the whole story, and the one that almost nobody ever quotes. Calhoun was not a doomer. He didn't run this experiment just to predict our inevitable catastrophic collapse. He actually spent the rest of his career trying to prevent it in humans. He actively searched for the variable that could make paradise work. And he found hope in a concept he called ideational generativity. It's a big academic term, but it basically means our uniquely human ability to extend into conceptual space. Unlike mice, when our physical space contracts, our minds can expand. We can forge new networks and invent entirely new societal roles that literally never existed before. So this is Calhoun's actionable strategy to protect ourselves, especially from modern digital alienation. Step 1, conceptualize beyond your physical limits. Step 2, connect through shared ideas, finding true belonging outside your immediate physical geography. Step 3 is absolutely crucial. Consciously build new, meaningful roles. If traditional jobs or community structures start to fade, we have to invent new ones. Maybe that means becoming digital mentors, community organizers, or creators. And step 4, keep making new reasons to be here. In an isolating digital age, our survival literally depends on actively maintaining our social infrastructure and our purpose. You see, the tragedy of Universe 25 wasn't that the resources ran out. It was that the imagination of the environment ran out. The mice didn't have a choice. They couldn't conceptualize a way out of their physical trap. But we do. As our world grows more and more complex, the most vital question we face isn't how to secure more comfort, but how to sustain our spirit. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What roles will you build?